Many thanks for staying with us on News Central now. Now to more stories. Nigeria plans to spend 26.01 trillion naira for the 2024 budget and will assume an oil price of $73.96 for its expenditures at an exchange rate of 700 naira per dollar. The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, made this known on Monday, saying that Nigeria will target oil production of 1.78 million barrels per day under the 2024 spending plan. He also added that the government will set aside 8.25 trillion naira for debt service and 7.78 trillion naira to cover salaries and pension for civil servants. Bagudu said the economy is expected to grow at a rate of 3.76% next year, with inflation currently at a 20-year high of 27.72%, moderating to 21% next year. Now, to discuss this further, we're being joined by Adeola Yusuf, a policy analyst and team lead, Platforms Africa. Thank you, Adeola, for joining us on the news.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening.
It's a pleasure. All right, now, speaking on the proposed budget, there is a part of it that says that there will be an assumption of the oil price. We're going to get to that, but in the meantime, I would like I would like to know what your opinion is when we talk about the potential impact that Nigeria planned expenditure of 26.01 trillion naira for 2024 budget will have on the country's overall economic stability.
Okay, thank you so much. We all know that a country of sovereign nature like Nigeria that is forward-looking must have a budget. And what this appropriation means simply for a lot of viewers, millions of viewers are watching us, is to set ahead, machinery is in motion, to set a target ahead, to look at how much we are expecting as a revenue, then how much we will spend in the next appropriation that we have, that is next year. So it's a good thing that we are in October now, and the appropriation for 2024 is already a subject of discourse. After the next meeting, the Atiku Bagudu, the minister in charge of that budget, announced the plan to present that before the National Assembly. Mind you, it is part of the technicalities of budget that such an appropriation is presented before the House of the People, that is the House, the National Assembly, and they have to look through the figures, the statistics of the budget, and pass that statistic. Look at how feasible the budget is and pass it. Then it will not become a law until it is signed by the president. Now, talking about the impact, it has been agreed based on the comment by the minister that we want to have the passage and the signing of this budget into law before December. That is before the end of this year. What that will mean is that as you are starting the year 2024 afresh, we are starting on a very fresh note. Mind you, before now, you will agree with me that budget in Nigeria will always delay in the passage, delay in the signing of the budget. And what that will mean is that at some point, we will have the budget signed for a fiscal year in like March or April of that year. And it will mean that the government of the day must have been spending out of appropriation. So now it's a good thing that before we get to 2024, before we start spending the penny in Naira in Nigeria, we have an idea of how much we are expecting as a revenue, and we have an idea of how much we are spending. And taking this further, it has shown clearly that Nigeria is expecting that in that year, 2024, we will be producing 1.78 million barrels every day. And Nigeria expects that the price of crude oil will be around $73 per barrel by that time. And that is what to that planning will make the budget to be a budget of prosperity for the country. So by and large, head and tail, it is to show that Nigeria has a plan of how much it's expecting next year, how much it wants to spend, and the way they expect the money to come in. So that is to give room for openness, for the transparency and accountability. So at the end of that year, we can ask questions. Statisticians and people of Nigeria can ask questions that, okay, you have pegged the budget at so amount, and were you able to achieve this? Are you able to spend out of the budget? Are you able to spend below the budget? Are you able to spend even above the budget? So it's a good thing that before the year 2024, we're already talking about the budget, and it will show clearly that if properly administered, if properly implemented or executed, it's going to be a good thing for the country.
All right. It's a good thing, Adeola, that you mentioned the oil price assumption. I was going to have a circle back to that anyway. Now, I'm going to ask you, how realistic do you think the assumption of an oil price of $73.96 per barrel in the budget is? And what would you say are the potential consequences if the actual oil prices deviate from this, let's say, assumptions?
Beautiful question. Thank you so much. I think it's important that I reiterate, for those that are viewing us, that the process of setting up a budget is to just predict, to forecast. The feasibility or the realistic nature of that budget depends on a lot of factors. For instance, let's talk about this oil price that you have just mentioned. We all know that what Nigeria does is to produce oil. Nigeria is not the only, factor or variable, that affects how much the crude oil will be sold. Mind you, we have OPEC, Organization of Petroleum and Exporting Countries. We have EIA, that is, an organization or an institute formed to look into the pricing of oil. We have, a war going on in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. That is affecting, the crude oil price. We have so many other things that can affect the volatility of that price. But it's a good thing that we have an idea of, okay, this is how much we expect the crude oil price to sell. And I've been so careful because in the last 7 years, in the last 4 or 5 years, we had a situation in which the crude oil sold at 0 Naira. In the last 8 years, we had a situation in which the crude oil sold at above $100 per barrel. We had a situation in which it sold at $0 per barrel. You understand? So the $73 per barrel is still, as far as I'm concerned, something in between, something that I think if we have like they say in mathematics, all these things being equal, is still a very good peg for the price of crude oil. And to stretch it further, $1.78 million barrels of crude oil. If Nigeria is able to put its act together, it's not out of place. It's something that Nigeria can produce. As at the last count, Nigeria is still doing far below. Nigeria is still doing far below 1.5 million barrels of crude oil, according to the statistics released by OPEC. But Nigeria has the capacity. There was a time we were doing 2.2 million barrels. There was a time we were doing 2.3 million barrels of crude oil. As a result of crude oil theft, as a result of issues in the Niger Delta, as a result of contractual disagreement and all that, the production of the country dropped. At some point below 1 million barrels daily. But I know Nigeria has the potential to even do 2 million barrels. So 1.7 million barrels expectation peg that Nigeria has for crude production is still a good thing that Nigerian can produce. And the $73 per barrel, it's not, to me, it's not over ambitious, and it's not below par when it comes to what can happen at the international crude oil pricing. But like I said, putting budget in place is for you to just forecast, to just look at it. Okay, if ceteris paribus, all things being equal, this is what will happen. So $73 per barrel is still a good thing. It will be so good for Nigeria if the crude oil sells beyond $73 per barrel. And what that will mean is that you are going to have a budget surplus. Nigeria is going to make more money than the amount that you have budgeted, you have envisaged that you are going to get. But the problem will be if the price of crude oil sells below $73 per barrel. Technically, what that will mean is that we are going to run a budget deficit. But $73.96 is still a very reasonable one, very good one. that Nigerian has set. So if the crude oil sells at $73 per barrel, and the price that the crude oil is selling, even up to yesterday, is still around this, price. So it shows clearly that it's still a very good thing. And with what is happening in Ukraine, if it continues, it means the price of crude oil will still, keep shooting up, and it's going to be a budget, surplus for Nigeria. But it's important that I reiterate that if we have anything, below $73 per barrel price of crude oil at the international market next year, it is going to affect the budget.
Definitely. Adeola Yusuf, policy analyst and team lead Platforms Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on News.
My pleasure to be on the program. Thank you, Father.